right, on Election Watch this morning, I have two guests. Dr. Fred Muhumuza has been here a couple of times. He's an economist. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, Joel. How are you?
Good, thank you. And then we're joined by a lady, I hope I'll pronounce the name right, Astrid Haas. Did I get it right?
Perfect.
There you are. She's a country economist for the International Growth Center. Good morning.
Good morning.
Doctor, let's begin with a generic, question here, and you'll try and summarize it. If one were to ask you, what's the state of Uganda's economy? In a minute, what would you tell them?
In a minute, the economy runs on so many things. It's been performing fairly well if you take the broad things like inflation came down at least, but it's been within the expected single digit. That's not going above 10%. Then you have the exchange rate at least has been stable below 3,500. We going by what we experienced earlier on, so that's another good plus. But some of these things are benefits we are getting from the depressed oil prices, the global oil prices. Those are some good benefits we picked from there. Food, we haven't had problems so far, but with this is the harvest season and the selling season. So far we are doing well on that, but we expect the next harvest season is some months away, and we're going to have the schools opening. So there's going to be some pressure on the food, but as of now, as you said, things are still okay. We're still being able to fund some basic things, but I think we're having strain on the budget to be able to maintain the government expenditures, and now the elections are getting to the gear where actually the Electoral Commission rolls out the money. Because a lot of it has been preparatory work. That doesn't involve a lot of cash to the magnitudes of when they begin to go out in the villages and in all these other places. So far, so good as we begin the year.
Now, Astrid, based on our GDP per capita of about $714, we're still among the poorest economies of the world. How do we move from this and become a middle-income country like Pakistan, like Morocco, and a couple of others?
So I think that's a very good question, and I know that a lot of presidential candidates have sort of touched upon where we can go with growth. I think I would agree with Dr. Fred on his assessment of the economy. However, one thing I will say is that the economy now needs to go through some structural transformation for Uganda to really reach the next step. What do I mean by this? I think we have to move from sort of low productivity and having a large part of the population in very low productive jobs to higher productive jobs that can actually bring the economy to the new level, and therefore the new lower middle income Uganda.
Our national debt, doctor, is about 14 trillion Uganda shillings, and we keep borrowing more and more. Do you think we are frugal? Of course, many person will tell you, look, borrowing is not bad, depending on what you borrow to use the money for. How disciplined or indisciplined are we in this area, you think?
I think we are indisciplined in what we are borrowing to use the money for. A little bit of our borrowing is going into consumption. But even that which is going into the investment areas, my challenge is you're borrowing short term and investing long term. You reach a middle where you haven't realized the harvest from what you invested in. So if you're going to borrow 2-year bonds at 23% and invest in roads, the roads won't give that back to you within a short time. Possibly even within 2 years you haven't paid. So when I was looking at the budget submissions for this coming year, I think we're going to have a 2.2 trillion interest payment on this debt. Now, where is that going to come from? So you're literally spending over 20% or almost 20% of your tax revenues on just paying interest. You're not even dissolving off the debt. So you begin to get worried and say, how is the future going to play out? We might have borrowed and invested in right things, but we have that mismatch, what we call the asset-debt mismatch. Your debt is short-term, but your assets are long-term. Then you have a place where you're going to get locked up, that you're still waiting for this child to graduate from university, and you borrowed it to pay fees, and the child hasn't graduated, and the creditors are saying, where's my money? So that's what you want to avoid, because that eventually triggers into the regular service provision. Because debt, by our way of managing our economy, takes first priority, debt payment. So any money that comes in, we must pay the creditors first. Now, if there is anything left, that's when you get into services. And that's why as we watch the elections, when I hear people saying, I'm going to improve services, I'm going to improve, I don't see that coming through if I look into the budget and the way it is going to be playing out.
Astrid, according to the World Bank and going by 2012 statistics, 33% of Ugandans are living below $2 a day.
Yeah.
Now, there's two schools of thought. Some people will tell you that maybe these people are not as hardworking and so on. Others will tell you, look, that is a bigger issue. It's tethered to leadership, that our leaders have failed to move our people from the abject poverty in which they are. How do you see this?
So I would actually look at it differently. So IGC has done some research into this, looking at data that exists here in Uganda to look at poverty dynamics, right? And I think the story is actually a little more optimistic, right? Uganda has been one of the success stories in moving people out of poverty over the last years.
Is that so?
However,
many Ugandans will tell you, look, we're still living in squalor and so on. How do you authenticate that?
I would say yes, of course, there's still a large number of people who live below the poverty line. What I will say though is again that it comes back to what I was talking about the structural growth. So in the particular study that I'm referencing, they found one of the things, although Ugandans are moving out of poverty, there's a little bit of fluctuation. So people move out, but then sometimes they come back in when there's an external shock, because they're very reliant, for example, on sustainable agriculture of one crop. So if that crop fails in 1 year, then unfortunately their income is not there. So I think two particular areas that policymakers will need to look at really to continue this sort of success story and moving Uganda forward in getting people out of poverty is investing in human capital, so here education and health, and at the same time and productivity and diversification. So those farmers who have more diversified portfolios, if one crop fails, then they still have the ability to have income from other crops, for example.
Dr. Fred, I know you've been following, campaigns as they've been going on. I'm sure you've looked at a couple of these manifestos vis-a-vis the economy. We have just tried to summarize and pull out what these candidates are saying about the economy. Let me just read to you this summary. Candidate Museveni says Uganda will achieve middle income status. That is like countries such as Pakistan on the lower end and Brazil on the higher end of the category by the year 2020. Babazi says public debt is okay if spent wisely. Besigye says government borrowing shouldn't be benefiting individual private pockets. Mabirizi, man who has become a celebrity, he says that... Okay, that's actually a voice of candidate Museveni. Mabirizi says government debt must be managed. Chala says Uganda is resource rich and can pull itself out of poverty by better utilizing natural resources. Bariamureba says he believes in focusing on the economy by expanding the private sector and agriculture. Biraro says every district should be turned into an export zone based on its great resources. Bwanika says government needs to create a cap on debt, a debt ceiling. Well, many of these are nebulous. They are quite generic. But when, for example, candidate Museveni says that we are going to attain middle income status by the year 2020, how believable is this?
Easier said than done. I think I've done calculations on that before and clearly shown that that's not going to be achievable. It can remain a goal, but 2020 definitely not. And I think there was even a time when it was supposed to be 2017. Now 2017 is 1 year down the road. People have kept shifting and going forward. So I really do not see us moving from $700 per capita. Lower middle income status is about $1,200. We have moved from 300 to 700 over almost 20 years. So how do we jump to the next 500 in that kind of 4 years? So I think whoever is calculating the numbers for him and feeding into his projections is not being sincere, and they need to change that, because there is no way you move from 700. As you said, you're still in very low productive areas. The global economy has turned down and we don't expect it to recover in these 5 years. So how is Uganda going to reinvent itself outside the global economy that is on a downward or at least on a stagnant spiral? I imagine some of this talk began when we thought the oil by now would be flowing, where you just divide the oil by the population. Definitely it would be there by mere definitions. But as of now, I think the dynamics have changed and we won't see that coming through.
Look, Astrid, I don't know if you attended the presidential debate or watched it from wherever you were. Some candidates were focusing on the aspect of agriculture, one particular one. Well, a plethora of them really. There is still a belief, and some would even justify, that agriculture is still Uganda's magic bullet. But then others feel we need to see how we move away from this. We are apparently manufacturing cars. I think we are assembling them. No disrespect to those that are doing this incredible work. Do you feel agriculture is still Uganda's comparative advantage, backbone, and for that matter, we need to invest quite a bit therein and harness that potential?
Yeah. So yes, I would agree that agriculture is a very important sector for the economy, also because it employs the largest part of the population. I think what needs to be done in agriculture, and I keep coming back to this theme, is increasing productivity. However, I think the biggest opportunity for Uganda, and this is what I missed a little bit in the debate and from the candidates, is actually urbanization. So if you look at the East Asian tigers who went through a large development in a few decades ago, they did this through urbanization. They did this through creating an urban manufacturing sector, creating a lot of jobs, and being able to employ people. If you look at Uganda, by some estimates, Kampala generates over 60% of Uganda's GDP, so you can't ignore it. In fact, we want to be able to harness it, to be able to really provide the foundation for growth within the country. So whilst, yes, I agree with you and I agree with the candidates, agriculture is definitely one part of the focus, I think we also cannot neglect to look at urbanization as well.
Doctor, Uganda has 48.9% of East Africa's arable land, and you'll hear people say we have got potential to be the food basket of not just the region, but even Africa. Is this possible, or is it just talk that makes us feel good as Ugandans and we move on thereafter?
I think that's the potential, that's the stock. Like an elephant is a big animal, but a child of 10 years is definitely possibly wiser than an elephant when it comes to using a smartphone. But an elephant also has its own wisdom in knowing where to find water in a drought season, which a child may not know. So the potential is there, but as I said, how are we organized to transform that potential into reality? And I think the talk that I find missing in agriculture is, there are basically two things. We do it as a way of life because that's what our forefathers did. So to us, it's a traditional way of doing and living. And we're not going to get out of it that soon. That I find that missing, and people just keep saying, we need to move out of agriculture. We're not going to get out of it. So you only need to find how do you improve it. Then naturally will mature out of it. I grew up in an agricultural home, but definitely I'm no longer an agricultural entity. But I still do farm here and there. Now, the other part about agriculture is it is a science. Much as we are doing it traditionally the way we came, and we haven't empowered science to feed into our agriculture. And the productivity you're talking about here is what are people planting? Because you see this farmer who plants and gets 1 ton of rice out of an acre. If only he planted another type of rice, this farmer can get 4 tons out of the same effort, same time, same soil. So by just changing that planting material, you have multiplied by 4 the productivity within 1 season. So you can transform it and can move Uganda within just a space of 2 to 3 years. You don't have to wait for that trajectory. But we are yet to understand exactly what we do in agriculture, by way of organization, by way of institutions, by way of funding, and I hear money being rolled out. And you pay money for a day-old chick and you still have to wait for months to get it delivered. When is this country going to move to the next level? This person has borrowed money to go into poultry. You pay for day-old chicks for 2 months, you're waiting, and the bank is charging you. Those are the things you want to work on, and how can we increase the supply of the right inputs, shorten that time, and move on.
And I think, if I can add to that, I think one key factor that's going to be part of Uganda's sort of agricultural transformation is use of inputs and farming practices. And here, the IGC, the lead academics for Uganda, Jakob Svensson and Tessa Boll, did some research on the input sector here. And what they found was, actually quite shocking that a lot of inputs here are counterfeit inputs. So we're talking here about fertilizer, hybrid seeds. And so, we always, or there's a large misconception that farmers are not using inputs because they don't know how to use inputs. However, what they did as part of this study is they also looked at farmers' perceptions, and farmers know that a lot of what they're receiving is in fact not useful to them to increase their productivity. So I think in the productivity question, inputs and really overcoming this challenge of a large market for counterfeit inputs will be key in helping farmers reach the next level in terms of yields.
All right, there's a clip that we want to show you. This is one of the candidates. Take a look.
Uganda will become a middle-income country in the next few years, lower middle income. By 2040, Uganda will be an upper middle income country.
Our debt to GDP ratio, the percentage is currently 36%. We must put a debt ceiling if we want to manage this debt.
Most of the debt that we are contracting is debt that goes into private pockets. If it was going into production, then it would be going a long way into repaying itself.
It's about debt management.
Borrowing money, being in debt, is all right. There's nothing wrong with it. The question is, to what use you put the money you borrow?
The other issue is to expand the economic activities, supporting the private sector.
Every district is an export zone of some kind. That must be done.
Africa is the richest continent, and all the rich countries actually got their gold and get their minerals to date from here. We are not that desperate. We just need to get united, get together, work together, use the wealth that God gave us.
There you are, not just one candidate, as I said earlier. Those are the presidential candidates giving their take on the economy, the issues therein, etc., etc. Let me get back to my panel. I don't know, Astrid, if you believe, but many a person will tell you Uganda's biggest predicament is unemployment, especially among young people. 83% of it is, even those that are unemployed, many of them are underemployed, and many other challenges. How do we remedy this?
So I would, again, move from looking at things like a challenge to looking at an opportunity. Yes, Uganda has a high fertility rate, and yes, there's a high unemployment rate, but what you have is like a very large potential productive part of society. So how do you harness that, and how do you put that to use? And I think in this case, investment in both human development, so what I was saying before, particularly education, and I think some of the candidates during the debate actually mentioned this area, for example, of vocational education and skills investment. And at the same time, really looking towards, particularly now in this case, cities and private sector investment in cities to create industries and a sector that will provide enough employment opportunities for all the graduates that we have coming out of universities, that we have coming out of schools and vocational institutions. And so I think it's really a multi-pronged approach. And yes, we will have to, I think it should be one of the priorities of the incoming president for the next term to look at this high employment rate. But I think we should also see how can we use it as an opportunity to benefit the growth in Uganda.
Dr. Fred, the incumbent there talks about the Vision 2040. Incidentally, I don't know if you agree, we seem to have no trouble putting down plans. I think we put down some really awesome plans. What happens along the way?
What possibly happened along the way is we went into a consultancy phase. Consultants put up documents. So you pay people to put up a document for you, they will put up a rosy document for you. But I always say you can even develop without a document. I've known my communities in the villages to build houses without plans, and I've built so many houses which are not on plans anyhow. Now, I think one of our biggest problems is those documents don't speak to the reality, and even what is in the documents never gets to be implemented. We seem to have adopted a wrong kind of theoretical model, and I remember times when some of my colleagues would say, you're just being an academic. I said, exactly, why don't you bring peasants into the ministries to run them? The reason you're brought in elites is because something there is intellectual. Now, in Uganda, one of the problems about the employment is I don't think we are really committed to it. Because if we were, we would be tracking the unemployment on a regular basis. Like we track inflation, like we track exchange rates, like where your heart is, you track it. Americans, employment is an issue. It can get a president out. It can turn opinion polls in a day. So they track those indicators, and every month they will tell you what has happened. In Uganda, we wait, I think, 3 years to get something, and even then it is just something way out there. There is no seriousness in that kind of tracking employment. Now, if you track that and you really made it an agenda and you want to change it, then you'll get into the main thing of saying, how do we balance out our fiscal and monetary? Now, this country, I find it having a mismatch. You have a tight monetary policy, which literally kills off private sector, that is intended to create the employment you're talking about, and you have an expansionary fiscal policy, this is expansionary government spending, which makes the central bank continue to tighten the monetary further. Now, you need to harmonize that. Government needs to know it's not the only animal in this economy. It is actually the smallest animal. The private sector is supposed to be like 80%. So you can't let the 20% carry the bread and then the 80% are on the receiving end of a tight monetary policy. We need to begin there and say, how much should government put in so that we can also relax a little bit on the monetary policy, the interest rates come down, people can borrow, people can invest, people can pay back their loans, retain their businesses. Every morning I hear people losing out their assets. That's a consequence of a tight monetary policy, and you cannot create jobs if you do not resolve that. You won't blame the monetary authorities. They have to do this to contain the dollar, to contain inflation, to contain all other things. But they are doing that at the expense of the private sector. But who is to blame? Originally, the government, which eventually took the lion's share of the economy and is doing things very inefficiently. Very, very inefficiently. You get the money, roads, the slippages there in billions of shillings. Those are the kinds of things you don't want to be getting into.
All right, I just need to let the viewers know that you can now get to be a part of this discussion. This morning we are discussing the state of the economy. That's the election watch point of discussion this morning. Get in touch with us. The number to call is going to roll on your screen, so you can let us know what do you make of our economy? What would you like done differently? You have heard the messages by the different candidates. Do you believe them, the issues that they are saying vis-a-vis the economy? So get in touch with us and let us know. Astrid, one of those other issues, those are the challenges that many persons feel is nibbling away at our economy is corruption. And many a time we have become gold medalists as a country. I'm not proud of that, but you know, we always come through as number one or close there. We're always among the top. How do we deal with this? We hear a lot of talk, and there's many institutions. There's the IGG, there's the Auditor General, there's PPDA, there's all these. Is it that they are enfeebled, they're not able to do their job, or is the workload a lot bigger than they are able to take on?
So I would say, you know, from my perspective as an economist from the IGC, this is, you know, outside my remit, although it affects obviously a lot of what happens within the economy. And I think really transparency and accountability will be very important, and I think will be very important to the voters as well. I think they'll be looking to hear from the candidates what they expect to do in this area. On how to tackle corruption specifically, this is, you know, obviously an age-old question both in Uganda and in many other countries. But I think, you know, there are better placed people to deal with the questions and the institutions that need to be put in place to be able to handle this.
Dr. Government says that they are cracking the whip. Are they cracking it well enough, you think?
You don't know whether they actually have a whip to crack or how strong that whip is, because it also has to be a strong one. I think taking a legalistic approach to corruption won't give us the solutions. And you can set up as many institutions as you saw with. You can take an operational, pragmatic approach to corruption. Let somebody sign on the dotted line. This is what I am going to deliver. We have given you the money. If you have not delivered what you agreed and you received the money for, we don't have to begin a legalistic process of finding out what happened to the money. So you have to get into those, and that's what some of these countries have done. So I tell you, build a road there, how much will it cost? We establish using independent sources. This road is going to cost us $50 million. We give you the $50 million because we don't want over-invoicing. That's also corruption. That's why we want to establish it through other ways and establish what actually is going to be plus or minus. Now, if I come back 2 years down the road and there is no road, after 2 years, do I have to bring IGG? Do I have to bring DPP? Do I have to go into the legal processes? You won't win through that route. It will going to take you long, and meanwhile more is happening. So if you take that other approach, where is the road, where is this, and it's not there, go to jail. It should be even in your contract. So if the road is not there, you go to jail. So that contract is a legal document that will eventually not require a judge. You have signed on it, give us what we needed. Then you need to take those approaches. But also the other parties send those signals. You still have cases of 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they're still lingering on. Then you're encouraging these guys to say, you'll just get a slap on the back and then you'll get away with it. Some countries have done executions, you shouldn't get that far. But I throw some guy in for some 20 years.
All right, very radical there. Maybe we need to do some of these things. All right, there you are. You can get in touch with us and share your thoughts. Somebody there, hello, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Okay, we seem to be having trouble hearing this. All right, good morning. What's your name, Chief?
I'm Haruna Sentamu.
Yes, Mr. Sentamu. I hear you. Go ahead. Give us your thoughts.
MJ, am I on NTV?
Yes, you are. Yes, you're live on NTV. What are your thoughts regarding the state of the
I
economy?
just wanted to say, too much corruption is taking over our country.
How do you think we can remedy this?
Cause our country. It's only to see that all the institutions in Uganda do their job correctly. But when you talk about religious passport issue, you find someone who is responsible say that I will not talk inside the matter. Who else will? If you cannot, you've been talking about the agricultural process. Enough money is not there. You find those put in the army, and yet the little is put in agriculture. How will you proceed? All the institutions of our country are there, are not working. Let us figure out the truth and know.
All right. Thank you. That's Mr. Sentamu there, clearly not amused by many things happening, corruption, etc., etc. Let's pick somebody else. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
What's your name, sir?
Robert from Missouri.
Yes, Robert.
What I think should be done should be these community money should come and do the real work rather than giving out money to the other people as well. Otherwise, we are losing it.
All right. Thank you. Brief and to the point. Somebody else. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Yes, good morning. What's your name, sir?
Anderson Prince. See one question.
Yes, go. Okay, we lost him there. You can try again. The number to call is on your screen. Share your thoughts with us on the state of the economy even as we head to elections. What do you think needs to be focused on? People are out there campaigning. They're making a plethora of promises. Do you believe them? Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, we'll try that again. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Joseph.
Yes, Joseph.
Yeah, actually,
Yes, we hear you. Go loud and go ahead. All right. We're discussing the state of the economy in this election watch edition and looking at a couple of things, promises. We did read those to you earlier on that have been made by the various presidential candidates, looking at the state of our economy. What bothers you as a Ugandan? What are those issues that you would like to see addressed by our leaders, by those that are promising, all these changes as they go out and campaign, etc., etc.? What is close to your heart? Share those thoughts with us. Hello, good morning.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What's your name?
I'm calling Emma.
Yes, Emma.
The truth is, the Uganda needs someone, Idi Amin.
Uganda today needs someone like Idi Amin?
Yes.
Elucidate on that.
What I'm meaning is this. For someone who tries to bring Amin to face something like corruption, that one is a rebel. He's a rebel in the country. So what I feel is more better is we should handle those people with really not in a way that either get them from the military state or you send off whatever they have created, meaning they have achieved within themselves. There are some people saying like they tend to fail, fail government funds, and what we should do is sell off whatever they bought for their property that we can gain back our funds.
All right, thank you for sharing that. There you are. Very radical. He's talking about somebody with a totalitarian hand to deal with corruption. Many people will say that's what would remedy things, but let's see how things go. Let's pick somebody else. Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Joel.
What's your name, sir?
Karugaba Apollo calling in from Barara.
Yes, Apollo, talk to us.
I want to comment on corruption. Hello?
I hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yes. I want to comment on corruption because this country, Uganda, with its leadership, they have no moral to fight corruption. So, actually, my comment is that I would need to see an overhaul of all the leadership from the top. Because for them, there is nobody who is willing to fight corruption in this country, starting from the top man. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Apollo. Let me just get back. We'll pick a few more calls in a moment. Let me get back to the panel here. Astrid, many people think that Ugandans are detached from things like the economy. They feel it's convoluted, these figures and so on. But does this not give you an impression that maybe Ugandans are aware? Sometimes they will be silently frustrated, but they know what's going on, they know what they want. Do you feel they do?
No, I think the economy is very fundamental to many people's lives, regardless of what sector they're in and what they're doing. Maybe they won't term it exactly, the interest rate or inflation rate or exchange rate, but they will feel the effects of what's happening and what policies government put in place. So I think, the economy for all Ugandans, including myself, I'm also Ugandan and I will be voting in this election, will be very key in its various shapes and forms in the way it affects their lives.
How do we, Doctor, get to, because people have talked about leaders, you can feel the frustration they're in, but sometimes they feel enfeebled. We do not really have a good culture of holding our leaders to the account. You have seen the promises that have been made by those presidential candidates. One of them is going to become president, but even when they do, often we do not keep hounding them and say, look, you promised A, you promised B. Why not fulfill it? Is it because, it's complicated stuff that we can't follow up? What do you think happens along the way?
I think along the way it is a question of the style of administration we have found ourselves in. This is like a British system where the people will delegate their authority to their members of parliament. And these are the people supposed to hold the leaders to account. Those distributive arms of government, you have the legislature and it's independent. And one of the people who will go to find out is, you'll be talking about the Auditor General. And the Auditor General's report, that's why it goes to Parliament. So that Parliament can hold the leaders to account. Now, if those structures are not working in place, now the population feels detached and they have no other way of coming back unless you are going to have the violence. Because that's the only way the masses will arise and say, every other system has failed us. Let's go and do what happened in Eastern Europe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, what happened in countries like Chad. So that is the other way the people will have to come back and do that. But you don't want to get there. So you want to come back and say, how do we therefore make these formal civilized systems work? How can we bring back the way Parliament to hold accountable the executive? And I think that is where Apollo's issue comes in to say, the system all seems to be encumbered and captured. If this was a human body, and I usually relate the economy to a human body, you have a virus that has taken over your immune and defense system. You are so sick that every time your body tries to recover, you vomit, and yet you need the energy from food to be able to fight the disease. But the disease has made sure no food goes in, your white blood cells are generated, it eats them. Now, in such circumstances, the only remedy is clear. You get into a health facility and they administer an external intervention. Now, this is what has happened. It was happening to FIFA. FIFA could not resolve itself internally until the FBI walked in. So you want to say, where is this external intervention that will come?
Which would it be for us?
And help the Ugandan system? Now, you could be talking about global systems, but I think they have become weaker in terms of dealing with corruption issues. They only come in if you can see Assad and all those fights. Not to say he was a bad person, he's a bad person, that is out there for people to determine what they want to say. But you used to have those moments where Nyerere comes in and says, hey, I know Uganda is a sovereign state, but what I mean is doing it down there, I don't like it. You are not going to see those kinds of things happening again. Uganda is in Somalia, literally trying to do exactly the same thing, to say internally Somalia cannot recover from the Al-Shabaab, which is a disease that has taken over the state. But the state needs to be bailed out. Now, these are the discussions you want to say, what is the best way to help a state that has been captured by the elites? The same elites you thought would fight corruption are benefiting from it, and there is no way disease will just walk away. It will have to carry you down your grave, and you don't want the country to go down the grave. So those are the dilemmas we find ourselves in. How do we get out of where we are?
But I would also say that there's a lot of tools in Uganda that citizens have to also hold their government to account. For example, we have one of the, in the world actually, one of the most transparent budget processes. You can go online and you can see what the transfers are from Ministry of Finance to the various districts on a website. And you can see what those transfers were meant for. And so I think there's also vehicles that you can use to help educate people. How can they use this information? How can they demand quality service delivery? How can they demand quality healthcare when they know the money has been transferred? And you know, we're currently looking into a piece of research in how you educate as part, and how you communicate as part of this. But I think there are systems in place that, you know, citizens can then use to also hold their government to accountability.
All right, I just have a couple of minutes. Let me pick a few more calls as time does allow. We're discussing the state of the economy. It's our point of discussion this morning on Election Watch. What do you see? What should improve? How can it improve? Etc., etc. Let's pick some more calls there. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Yes, hello, you're speaking to Otim Innocent.
Yes, Otim. Share your thoughts, Otim.
Yes, Otim, I'm calling from Naguru. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Timothy. I hear you loud and clear.
So, my submission about this issue of corruption in Uganda is that, according to the current government, the Fed is based using all measures that have been put in place. For example, the Leadership Code of Act of 2002. We are having the Inspectorate of Government Act 2002. We are having even the Access to Information Act of 2009. The Whistleblowers Act of 2010. So the major challenge of the Ugandans today is we need to mobilize ourselves, and we begin from our homes, our families, that we organize ourselves to fit into the system. But if it is that they are going to blame the government only to fight corruption, it can never work out. So I think my information to the Ugandans is that it begins in our homes, our families, our businesses, then spread it out. That's the only way to fight corruption. Otherwise, the current government has done its best, and I really advocate for the NRM government to go back in power. Because it has done a lot, that is enough.
All right, thank you, team. I didn't want people calling, though, to campaign for their candidates. It will become troublesome if everybody does that. But it talks about corruption. Clearly, you cannot discuss, for some Ugandans, the state of the country's economy without, you know, discussing corruption. It is close to their heart. Let's pick somebody else there. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Yes, what's your name, ma'am?
I'm Pretty, first of Mali.
Finally, we have a lady. Talk to us. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think
Kale, thank you. All right, we'll pick just one final call and we get to wrap this up. The lady, of course, saying that, look, the laws in this country are out to go for the poor, the weak. The big fish, as we normally like to refer to them in this country, swim very fast away from the laws. But let's see how things change. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
What's your name, sir?
Yes, it's Ibra.
Yes, Ibra.
Yes, calling the participants in the program.
Go ahead, give me your thoughts in a short while.
Now, the problem, maybe like in our economy, corruption is not one problem. Nothing. And the worst thing is,
yes, I hear you.
The number of corruption, like, look at it.
I like Mukula. I've been like moving around the president. So perhaps I've been mentioned in Syria, and I don't want moving around the president. So if the president is but next, I think it's a war place in the country. Good day.
Okay, good day there. Hopefully it ceases to be our way of life. Let's wrap this up. Astrid, on February 18th we are going to vote, and on 20th we'll have a president. It could be this one, it could be one of the other 7. What do you think majorly should whoever becomes president focus on, say in the first 100 days regarding the economy?
I think in the first 100 days, I think, when you look at short term, there will be issues to do with, inflation and the exchange rate, although those have been managed very well by, the Bank of Uganda and Ministry of Finance. But I think also in the first 100 days, I think the incoming president should also show the voters who have voted for them that they're looking also towards the medium and long term. What plans really are they going to put in place now that are going to affect the economic development of the country in the medium and long term?
Doctor, after 2011, we went through a plummeting, economically at least, and to date we're still reeling from some of those effects. There was a lot of money spent for the election, etc., and we are still grappling with that. Some people are worried that it's a lot worse now, it's going to get worse. With these elections, a lot more money has been used and so on. Do you think there are concerns, there are worries hold water?
I don't think a lot more money has been used this time. Maybe if it has been conscious. We're yet to see, because the money may be spent in the coming 2 weeks and maybe even after. But we hope we'll get to a level where quite a number of pointers do not point to us getting to where we were in 2011. So definitely I don't think we are going to go that route. But whoever comes in as a president has got to know that they've got to change government. And changing government doesn't just mean changing a leader. Even if the incumbent comes back and the Ugandan side, he's got to know that he's got to change government. We know that the government in Myanmar, the military government there for 50 years, is reinventing itself. So whoever comes in has got to reinvent this government. Otherwise, if we continue with the status quo and even the new incoming one just thinks I can just replace whoever was there from 7 and I put in mine, you've so many things that you need to do. The structural reforms we was talking about here will involve reinventing government institutions. Some of them you need to close them. You need to hear like a Magufuli kind of talk and doing of things where you come in and say this must be done. Somebody referred to an Amin here. We are sitting here in a facility that Amin just said, I'm not going to have an OAU summit under trees. You guys go and put up a conference center, and there it was. That's the kind of person you want to hear. So whichever president comes in, he must talk tough. He must be seen talking tough and doing tough things, because that is what will take a president to be and take this country to the next level.
All right, there you are, Astrid Hass and Dr. Fred Muhumuza. Thanks a bunch for sharing your incredible insights this morning.
Welcome, Joel.
There you are, and that's it for today's edition of Election Watch. We'll do this again on Monday. But don't go just yet. Brian Mulondo is coming up with Everyday Life. Good morning.